Don't do that if you have a Toyota Tundra, because the Tundra still has a steel bed. Why? Well, good morning everybody. How y'all doing? Pretty good here, and welcome to the channel. So as you can see, Toyota is still using steel in the bed of the Tundra. So why doesn't the Tundra have the Tacoma composite bed? As I said, Tundra is still using, or still has, steel in the bed of the truck. Now, Toyota has been using the SMC bed, or the sheet mold composite bed, in the Tacoma for years. I've had, I don't know, 4 or 5 Tacomas. Every one of them have had the composite bed in them, and I've not had any problems. Now, to be clear, again, for those of you that don't know, the bed in the Tacoma, because I didn't understand this myself when I got my first Tacoma, the bed in the Tacoma is a composite bed. It's not a liner, it's not a covering. What you see when you look into that bed is what the bed is. And it's funny because, like I said, I didn't realize that. It wasn't until I was nosing around the truck, you know, looking around, I looked underneath and I thought, that is the bed. I looked up and I could see the plastic, the same thing, the composite, I shouldn't call it plastic, the composite material underneath that was the same as what was on top. That's what led me to discover that the bed in the Tacoma is indeed composite. It's not a traditional steel bed. Now, some of the benefits, you know, to the composite bed, there's no need for a plastic liner or a spray-in. Now, I will say that it is a slippery material. So a bed mat is probably something that you want to invest in if you don't want stuff sliding around all over the place in there. I did a little test a while back of just how slippery that bed was. I'll leave a link down below if you want to check that out. The composite bed won't rust. There's no paint to chip off. It's dent and corrosion resistant. They also have a higher impact than steel does. And I also showed that, maybe in the same video, I'm not sure, but I took a hammer and dropped it, you know, from a decent height. It wasn't like 15 feet up in the air like those Chevy commercials do with the F-150 aluminum bed. But when I did that, it didn't damage the bed at all. I didn't get any chipping of the paint, which I surely would have gotten had it been a standard steel bed with a paint coating over it, or any kind of dent or anything like that. There's also weight savings when you go with the composite bed. It can be as high as 35% less weight, and that translates roughly, you know, to 65 pounds, something like that. That increases fuel economy. You have to haul around less, right? It increases fuel economy, and it has a better weight ratio. So you get a little bit better performance. The truck doesn't have to haul around that extra 65 pounds. Now, they also provide opportunities for mold-in features that aren't available in the steel bed. Now, what I mean by that are like the side compartments, which unfortunately Toyota seems to have done away with in the Tacoma for now. But side compartments, little compartments for outlets and stuff. The possibilities are limitless depending on what the public wants, I guess. So, the question begs, and let's look at the big three, and possibly Toyota as well. Why aren't they using composites in their trucks? Although I think Chevy has started to do that. It all comes down to money. It's all about money. You know, the big three were the kings and have been the kings of steel for years. Decades, 100 years probably, maybe more. They have billions invested in steel processing and employee training. Can you imagine the retooling costs to get rid of all those steel dies and retrain all the employees, and possibly the change in equipment and handling material that you would need to go with composite beds? Next up, for years, steel was cheaper and way more abundant. It was everywhere. Steel, it was easy to get, didn't cost much. Gas was also cheaper, so the weight difference didn't really matter to consumers. The fact that they were paying more to haul around that steel bed. to haul around that steel bed because gas just didn't cost much. For years, there weren't many alternatives. You know, steel was it. You go steel or steel. Composite molds are cheap. They're cheaper now they're cheaper overall rather, than steel stamping dies. But the problem is the cost of composite materials is still more expensive than steel. Even so, the gap between the cost of composites and steel has been narrowing over the years. Steel is getting more expensive. Of course, gasoline costs rise. So you and me, we start to pay a little bit more attention to ways that money can be saved in our vehicles. In other words, not hauling around that extra 65 or whatever pounds of weight because we have a steel bed. So, let's get to the main question. Why isn't Toyota using the composite bed in the Tundra? Even given all those reasons that I mentioned, they do have it in the Tacoma. And the reason is you and me. You and me are to blame. The one big reason, and it's wrong, is public perception. Public perception. When you say composite, people, and I'm guilty, I did this in the beginning of the video myself. People think plastic, right? And we all know that plastic is flimsy and it cracks and it becomes brittle when it's cold and you can punch holes through it. You know, I think when most of us think about a composite plastic bed, we think that we could take, I don't know, something like a screwdriver and just poke a hole right through it. You know, like that real thin plastic that lids are made out of, or Tupperware, right? Well, that's not what a composite bed is. It's not made out of the same stuff as Tupperware or plastic lids or saran wrap. It's much stronger. As I mentioned, it's been proven that it's stronger in most cases than steel. Now, the other thing is that it becomes, as I mentioned, brittle in the winter. You know, when it gets cold outside, somehow when you just tap it, it's going to shatter. Or melty in the summer. You know, when it's really hot outside, especially down here where I am, that somehow that plastic begins to flow a little bit, you know? That it can like degrade, which is not true. Now, a good example of public perception is the F-150. The #1 selling truck in the country, right? Or in the world, maybe. You know, they went with the aluminum, the military grade aluminum on their trucks. And they went with the aluminum bed. Now, other companies, and I believe it was Chevy, jumped on that, right? If you guys recall, you've probably seen the ad where Chevy has a load of cinder blocks sitting probably, I don't know, 10 feet, maybe more, above the F-150, and they drop it into the bed. Now, after they remove the blocks, you can see there are severe dents, even a couple of holes in that aluminum bed. Now, Chevy was smart. They know that you and I, the public, we care about those things, that we're easily influenced, right? Well, I gotta ask you, how many people out there are gonna take a load of cinder blocks 10 feet up in the air or more and drop them into your truck? I mean, I would think that you would have a problem with that even if you were using steel. And I know in that ad they also showed those cinder blocks being dropped into a Chevy bed, but I wonder, were the angles changed? Did they make sure that they weren't going to hit that bed in such a fashion that they would damage it the same way that they did the aluminum bed of the Ford? Who knows? I'm not saying they did. I'm not saying they didn't. But I would wager that if you were to drop cinder blocks from that kind of height, and they make it seem like this is something you do all the time, right? That eventually you're going to poke a hole in that steel bed as well. Because let's face it, it's only yay thick to begin with. It's not like a steel bed is 6 inches thick or something, right? So it's all about public perception. You know, all of the manufacturers, and rightfully so, have to be concerned about what we think of their vehicles, even if it's not true. Again, it's been proven that the composite bed is as strong or stronger than the steel bed. So I say, come on, Toyota, let's take a leap let's do what you should have done years ago and let's put a composite bed in the brand new redesigned Toyota Tundra. We want it. We want less weight. We want better performance and fuel economy. And this is a pretty easy way to do it. Anyway, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Would you buy a Tundra with a composite bed? And if not, why? As usual, appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on the web. Have a great day. Bye.